Today on Valentine's Day, I had decided that I would talk about love and about what it means. And then in the afternoon, we started hearing about the shooting in our neighborhood. And I just extended that to talk about love and belonging. When children feel that they're the odd ones out, when they feel unaccepted for who they are and unappreciated, it messes with their heads. A child who would be obsessed with collecting guns and other acts of violence is calling out for help. If you see your children posting pictures on Instagram, or you see friends doing it, it's a red flag. See, everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be accepted. The worst feeling in the world is to be thrown out of the group. This happened to the Mongol Emperor Genghis Khan, whatever he's called. He was thrown out of his group, and in a nomadic group, the worst punishment is excommunication. And what a monster it created. It created a man who has killed and slaughtered thousands, unleashed terror and violence on a scale never seen before. The feeling of being thrown out is the worst. It stems from the time when we all belonged to nomad groups. Because you could never survive outside of the group. This is why when relationships break down, you feel so offended and you stay offended for such a long period of time. There was one child who was interviewed on TV, and they asked him, "What do you feel?" He says, "I just feel that I want to spread love and peace and happiness wherever I go, because this poor unfortunate child was obviously not loved, was not cared for. Nobody cared about him. And it just goes to show that we need to spread more and more peace and more love so that these things don't happen." With so much emphasis on the self, with so much emphasis on personal success, children are being ignored. They are open to so many influences. Earlier, when you grew up in your village, there were thousands of others that watched out for you. Now nobody is watching out. Nobody is seeing the red flags, and nobody is giving the help needed. If the parents were busy, there were always grandparents and aunts and uncles, people that gave the child love. Now a child comes in to an empty house, both parents are working. He turns on the computer, is open to all the influences. He's lonely. He doesn't know what to do with his time. He's awkward and socially not like the others. And today's not just today's children. Children in general are cruel to those who don't belong, who are not like the others. They have like a monkey mentality. And as long as you look like a monkey, you're fine. But if you look like a gorilla or a chimpanzee, then they're going to, make fun of you. They're going to make you feel bad about yourself. No one is watching out for these children. Young kids who are under so much stress, so much pressure to behave in a certain way. We are supremely concerned with our own self, and our work never extends beyond that. I always say, the 5 fingers in your hand, each one is different, yet all of them belong to you. Can you say that your pinky is too small, or your thumb is too fat, or your middle finger is too tall? I don't want this anymore. Yet we very easily get rid of in-laws and aunts and sisters and friends. We don't have a sense of belonging. And if a child doesn't belong, then he's lost. He's lost and open to all the influences. The love that is inside of him ferments as anger. And when that anger releases, it's often an act of violence. Because for some reason, I don't know whether he's had some help from the media and the movies that we see, revenge is seen as a wonderful thing. Someone does something wrong to you, I'm all for women's rights and all of that, but most of the movies on women's empowerment show, Jennifer Lopez or whoever that is, learning kickboxing and fighting and going and killing all the men that commit the crimes. And then you say, wow, great. What are the Superman movies and all these Marvel heroes? All about revenge. All about revenge. So revenge is seen as something good, something empowering, something that compensates for something else. We're not teaching our children how to process the voices in their heads. You teach them to tie their shoelaces. There was a case they just talked about, or Rajiv was telling me about a lady who presented her son with a gun, and he promptly took that gun and killed her. In Kentucky, was it?
Yeah, January.
Yeah. In addition to a host of others. So you present a 15-year-old child with a gun, or what are you expecting? What are you expecting? We don't have to give our children guns, we have to give our children roses. We have to bring out the more gentler aspects to our nature. Because in your heart, love, hate, and fear reside in equal parts. And at a time, only one emotion can come to the surface. If you feel hate, who you love doesn't matter, who loves you doesn't matter. You will act only on that emotion. If you fear, then hate and love don't matter. You will behave according to your fear. But if you love, you can't hate. And you can't, and then there's no fear either. Because there's so much hatred, a man can fly a plane into a building and not worry about his fears of dying. Because there's no fear at that time. There's only hatred. into your feeling of stability, of love, that is your essence. Most often we think of love as passion, as something that tries to eat the other person up, control the other person, decide how the other person is going to behave. If you behave like this, then you love me. If you behave like that, then you don't love me. Right? We have lots and lots of conditions on how a person who loves should behave. And so easily, people are pushed out. I remember one time when my daughter came back from middle school and said, "Mom, today I ate lunch in the bathroom." And I cried. What makes a child feel so unwanted that he goes into a toilet to eat lunch, and she goes into a toilet to eat lunch? You have to teach your children to love and accept others. I'm always rushing to the defense of my children. Maybe it's a wrong thing. But I remember in Mexico, there was a child who repeatedly on the bus would spit on my daughter. One day she came with a whole big thing of spit on her shirt, and I said, "This is it." I called the mother up, lived in the same building, and when she came down, she had no idea that her child was doing this. They were a Jewish family. And she cried because she says, "Do you know your grandfather ran away from people who were doing exactly this to them in Germany? And you have the guts to do this?" We have to teach our children, you see. We don't know how they're acting. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they're going through. Because we don't check their social media. Be a parent. Be a parent. If you love your child, make sure you know what's happening in their lives. Don't be afraid to walk into the shut room, the locked room. Don't be afraid to open their phones periodically and check who their friends are, what they're seeing, what are the sites they're visiting. Because there are clues always when a child is lonely and lost, or when a child is a bully. And then of course, a child is mentally disturbed, unloved, uncared for, and on a click of a button can get a gun. In my country, there are 1 billion people, but they can only get their hands on a knife. How much harm can you do with a knife? Certainly not the kind of harm that we're seeing. We're all been parents, we all have children, we have friends. We want to send our children to school to give them a better life. But we need to be more involved. We need to extend our sense of community. Get more involved in what is happening. In fact, I got so fed up last week of just not being able to do anything. I just went for a Broward Democratic Party meeting to volunteer for public office, to see if I could do something. Because you need to be involved in what's happening around you. It's not just what's happening in my house. It's what's happening in my neighborhood. It's what's happening in my city. There's so much that can be done. If I could only teach meditation in every school, how wonderful would that be? If each one of us could go into a school and start their day with a 15-minute meditation, that that would change their lives. Children that commit these random acts of violence are just not in touch with their own consciousness. All of us just want to belong. It's a very, very primal need. The need to feel loved and the need to belong. Very few animals in the wild live alone. Most seek the company of a herd. Other than a tiger, I don't know, I'm not sure, very well versed in animal thing, but to my mind, I think of elephants, you think of a herd of elephants, you think zebra, you see them, you see a bunch of them, you see wildebeest, you see fish. Everything tends to cluster together. We need to feel a sense of belonging. Get into a group of like-minded people. Enough of these school shootings, enough of killing children, enough of this domestic terrorism, enough of guns in this country. You don't need guns to feel safe, you need to take away their guns to feel safe. You don't need to keep that gun in your home. You need to take away their guns so they do not have access to it. And there are so many countries that have done that. Australia, it's very strict gun laws. They had one school shooting, they tightened everything up. We need to have a national protest in every city asking for this. We have a right to live, right to send our children to school for an education and expect that at the end of the school day they will come home. How are you increasing your sense of belonging? Valentine's Day is not about chocolates and flowers. Love is like a perfume. It just spreads. It just spreads. You cannot allow hatred to win the game. Create your own little bubble of joy and happiness and spread it. At the same time, you cannot sit in your home and say, I'm happy, I'm safe. We need to all become active in our communities and to spread this message of peace and love. Because it's all energy, right? It's all energy. It's come so close to our home. Which means the energy in our neighborhood is not good. It's not good. If even one child feels that in order to be seen and to be heard, he needs to kill someone else, there is something fundamentally wrong with the way we're all living. This was never the case. This was never the case. It's just the family unit has completely broken down. And this love for guns, I don't know. I'm a person of peace. I could never hold a gun in my hand. I could never do it because the very fact that you buy a gun means you're ready to kill something or someone. Right? It's not a kitchen knife which you're using to cut vegetables. If you buy a gun and you're keeping it in your house, it means you're ready to kill someone else. to commit an act of violence. You protect yourself with the power of your meditation, with the power of your energy. That's what saves you. One time, Sri was in California, and this white supremacist kind of guy rushed him with a knife, ready to kill him. He couldn't bring a gun into the place. And he told him, wait, you can kill me. But first listen to what I have to say. And to make a long story short, this guy who attacked him became an art of living teacher, teaching peace and love. It is the power of your love, your aura, that affects everything around you. That's why I never preach religion. I only preach love. Happiness is your birthright. You have to be happy. That poor child was not. He's got to live with the consequences of his actions for the rest of his life. He's got to live with the karma of killing 17 children, with the pain of the parents and the families that are right now going through such a difficult time. Let's take a couple of minutes just to close your eyes and just visualize in your mind a time of complete peace and complete love. Keep your palms open and receive that energy.